On to our continuing series of webinars around hybrid workplace. In this session, we'll discuss how to protect our users and endpoints wherever they are. Just to let you know, this session is going to be recorded and you'll get access to the recording afterwards. So I'm Andy Taylor. I'm the lead sales engineer at ITC Secure around everything to do with Microsoft identity and security. I would also like to introduce Tom Pearson.
Hi everyone, so as Andy says, I'm Tom Pearson. I'm a cloud security consultant with ITC Secure, specialising in endpoint management, security and the Microsoft 365 Enterprise Identity Security Toolkit.
So this session's designed to be very demo based, and we'll go through a series of scenarios to show you how we can build our devices remotely, how we can protect our corporate users, and look at other scenarios around bring your own devices, and also look at how we do threat protection as well. So just some housekeeping before we begin. If you need to ask any questions, please type a message to us. We've got one of my colleagues on that can answer some of the questions interactively. But other than that as well, we've got a Q&A section at the end, so you can ask any questions that you've got there as well. So this is the third part of a series of events around hybrid working. We've already done two around identity, around the joiners, movers, leavers process, and we've got recordings of that, which we can send you. We'll discuss some of the other events that we've got at the end of this session. So before we start going into some of those scenarios and showing you some of the consoles and some of the user experience, we'll just talk a little bit around what Microsoft does around user identity and endpoint management. So as we all know, over the last 18 months, the world's changed a lot, and we've really moved from that place of being able to protect most of our devices because they're in our offices, behind our corporate firewalls and those sorts of areas, to actually being much more out, users working from home, users working from remote locations, and still actually potentially working from offices as we come back. Now, this didn't just start 18 months ago. This has been the world's been changing over several years, and ITC's done quite a lot of work around that with a lot of our customers. So we've still got the traditional IT that's going on, but we've got this new world of embracing modern hybrid working and the challenges in doing that. So IT departments have built themselves around this traditional PC life cycles, managing images, controlling updates, locking down behavior and protecting users. But how can we do this in a more modern way? And we need to evolve and adapt to that. So what we're going to show you with the Microsoft solution, we shouldn't just be thinking about the work environment. We need to think about the home environment, the office environment, maybe even other areas like the factory floor, or it could be in a sales situation. So we want to take that modern approach to everything that we're trying to tackle. And in this session, we'll talk about those corporate devices. We'll talk about BYOD, bring your own device. We'll maybe touch a little bit on IoT, mobile, virtual desktops, and SaaS-based applications, because we need to embrace everything. So from a Microsoft solution stack, what we really wanted to do is we want to look at some of the capabilities, how we prevent attacks, how we actually protect against them, and how we actually go about investigating them. We shouldn't really care where that attack's coming from. We just need to handle it in a complete way, whether it's external or an internal attack. Internal is always a bit interesting, because obviously it could be by accident that something has gone wrong, but it could be that rogue employee who's got a little bit more access to systems than we thought, and actually could be launching an attack on us. So, but what we will need to do is, whenever we gain that attack, we need to be able to actually, if it does happen, how do we actually investigate it so it doesn't happen again? So with this modern management, what we want to look at is we want to try and automate as much as possible. So we're not getting, so we don't need to repeat things. We want to actually automate and be proactive and actually be much more practical for our users and get our productivity up. We want to protect, obviously, but we also want to make the administration as easy as possible. So we can actually see what's happening from a build, from a protection, and from a threat point of view. We want to map to the zero trust policies of actually having a zero trust standpoint for our devices and users. I've talked a little bit about what ITC is, but we'll just spend a couple of minutes on who ITC are and how we can help you in some of these areas, and then we'll jump into some of the scenarios. So ITC, we're a Gulf Microsoft partner around security and identity. We've got a broad scope of security skills, certainly around things like enterprise mobility and security, EMS, as you may know it as. We also provide services around our consultancy and managed services as well. We run our own SOC 24/7. We also have MDR, managed service capability as well. And we also do a lot of things around things like Microsoft Cloud App Security, which we'll talk about, Defender for Endpoint, which we'll definitely talk about as well, and Intune, which has now been rebadged as Endpoint Management, and a lot of the other Microsoft security product solutions we're very capable of. We also have around about 40 certified Microsoft professionals in our organisation with skills around Azure to identity and security. And Microsoft and ITC together, we provide a series of workshops around identity, security, and Azure at no cost to yourself. And we'll talk to you a bit about that at the end of this presentation, how we can help you on those sorts of things. So we sort of mentioned hybrid work is not going away. It's growing, and we need to be able to manage those users and those devices, whether, like we said before, but we're at home, in the office, in the community, or a combination of all these. This complex work is going to be the new norm, really, as we move forward. At the same time, those external threats are still growing, and with those threats, we also have the insider risk possibility. So what we need to do is do this in a cost-effective way with the resources that we have. And to solve this identity and endpoint management is the control plane about everything that we want to do. So let's jump in and actually look at some of this. So what our first scenario is, we're going to actually send a device to that user. Maybe they're a new starter. So straight from the factory, we can ship the device to them. We don't need to do an image down onto the machine, pre-build anything. We just literally ship it to them, and then what Tom will go through is what that experience is. When we unbox it, how do we actually morph that device into a corporate machine? So just for time saving, we've actually screenshotted a lot of this piece so we can actually show you the experience. So over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Andy. So in a hybrid working environment, we require a solution whereby provisioning and delivering devices to users is both scalable and efficient, whilst reducing the overhead on IT administrators and cost, and also ensuring that the users can be productive as quickly as possible. So this is where Windows Autopilot can help us. We can provision devices directly from the cloud, leveraging Microsoft Endpoint Manager solution, which is Microsoft's MDM. And since, as Andy mentioned, since Autopilot uses the laptop's OEM image, we can essentially ship the laptop directly from the factory to the user's doorstep. So once the user switches on the device, connects up to their network, they're then presented with a screen similar to this, where they'll be just asked to enter their Office 365 password. And then once the user clicks next, we want to enforce zero trust, as Andy mentioned. So this is where trust is always earned and never assumed. So what we can implement through the Autopilot enrollment process is enforcing a multi-factor authentication challenge to enroll a device. If a user has not signed up for multi-factor authentication, they can do through the Windows Autopilot enrollment process shown by the steps here. So the user will just need to download the Microsoft Authenticator app to their phone, scan the QR code, and then go through to the next prompts. So once they've done that and they've added their phone, they'll then be prompted for MFA. A success message will come if they've passed the MFA check, which will allow them to enroll a device securely. So once the users enroll their device, they'll see a screen, a configuration screen, similar to the one on your screen now. So where the device will connect up to the Endpoint Manager and download all the targeted configurations and applications targeted to that device. The user will not have to do anything at this point. They'll just need to wait for this screen to complete the setup. And then once the user has, once the device has finished that, the user will then be able to sign in. What we can also enforce from Windows Autopilot is Windows Hello for Business registration. So this will allow the users to enforce a more secure authentication method, such as a device PIN or biometrics, such as a face or fingerprint scan. So back over to Andy for the next scenario. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, so in this first scenario, what we're going to look at is we've now got our device built. So how do we manage remotely that corporate device? So in this scenario and the demos that we're going to actually run, we're going to show you what the user experience is, and what the back-end administration piece is around what policies and which portals we're going in. In this case, we're going to go into the Endpoint Manager portal and show you some of the policies. From a user point of view, what we're going to show you is how we can seamlessly log into the device and how we can single sign on into some SaaS-based applications and how we can protect the applications for that user and the device. So back to you, Tom.
Very much. So here we have the user's corporate device. So continuing on from the Autopilot deployment, Autopilot is just finished on this machine and the policies have applied. So if we connect on, I've set up Windows Hello for Business on this device, so it's asking for my device PIN, which I shall input now, and the user will sign on. So once the user signed on and the policy loads, this is a corporately managed device with the policies that we've downloaded from Endpoint Manager implemented. So for example, on this device, the Office apps were already deployed onto it. We've enabled Microsoft OneDrive to automatically sign in and connect to the user's account so they can get their documents. Teams is already configured and signs in automatically. We've also configured Outlook to build their mailbox profile during provisioning so they can easily get to their mailbox immediately. And finally, we're also managing the Microsoft Edge browser, allowing us to create a custom homepage so the user can sign directly onto their Microsoft My Applications portal. So as you saw there, the portal loaded directly. The user was not prompted again to sign on or input any more passwords. They're just straight onto their portal. So from a productivity standpoint, the user can get onto the device, it's managed, they've got the apps that they need to use directly on straight away, and they've got their email set up and they're ready to go. So as you can see, we can get our application from here. So we can click on Microsoft SharePoint to access our data. And we can go to the SharePoint site and we can access our documents. No problem. So this is a Microsoft app. What we can also is integrate third-party apps. So if I just come back to our My Apps portal, you can see we've also got Salesforce here. So if I click onto Salesforce now, we can open this application.
And the thing to benefit, as we mentioned, this was a new user into the organization. And what we actually do is we provision that user into Azure. We can actually provision the user in with the correct rights that they need into things like Salesforce. So that could be this user is a sales manager. So they actually get the correct rights instead of being a sales manager. Could have been just a salesperson, so they get different rights into the app.
And what you also probably noticed there as well is there was no authentication to sign into this application. They were signed directly in. And this is because we've integrated Salesforce directly with Azure AD. So I'll now pass it back on to Andy again. He'll go through the next scenario.
No, you should have been doing the admin console. Sorry.
Apologies. I need to show you how this is actually administrated, don't I? Because I've shown you on the device how it's actually done, but how is it actually done in the back end? So for this, we go to the Microsoft. Apologies. One moment, please. Obviously, the demo gods are not on my side today, so apologies for that. Normal service resumes now. So as I mentioned, we've just seen the device, but how is this all administered? So this is all administered via the Microsoft Endpoint Manager portal. So I've just gone to my browser and gone to endpoint.microsoft.com, and this is the home page. So in this scenario, to configure, we'll go to devices. And you can see here we have multitude of different operating systems that we can manage. So we can manage iOS, macOS, Android. But in the case of this demo, we're managing Windows devices. So let's just go into here. And you can see these are the devices that are currently enrolled into our organization's Endpoint Manager. So if I just click onto a device, we can see we can grab properties of the device, what users assign to it, whether it's corporate device, what device model and operating system. And we can also enforce remote commands to this device, such as a policy sync. We can also instruct a reboot of the device, or we can also wipe the device completely back to factory settings if for a scenario, the device is lost or stolen. So if I just come back out of this and back to our device window before, we can also enforce the enrollment profile. So this is what we've seen before with Windows Autopilot. So from here, we can scope the devices that are targeted. We can scope the profiles that are targeted, so how the device is actually joined to our Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And we can also configure what the user sees during the autopilot process and what applications are instructed to download before the user can actually start to use the device. So lastly, what configuration is actually pulled onto the device is from configuration profiles. So from here, this configuration profile here controls the application of automatically setting up Outlook and Edge and OneDrive. I'm also managing the local admins on the device through a configuration profile. So we can only have one admin on the device, and also I'm enforcing some security policies, in which we'll see in an upcoming demo. Lastly, I also deployed the Microsoft 365 apps, which are deployed from the applications. And if I just go to all apps, I can see there's a policy here for the Microsoft Windows apps. So now I'll pass you back to Andy, who will now go through the next scenario. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. So we talked about how we protect a corporate device. So what do we do around BYOD or personal devices? And what we do around this is we actually start protecting the applications and the data. So yet again, we're going to show you what it's going to look like from a user experience and how we control their access to those corporate applications and data. And in this scenario demo, we'll protect the data in the applications such as SharePoint, as we just showed you. And we'll also show you how we restrict the copying of data, including printing, from a user's point of view. And then in the administration side, we'll actually open up into, well, the Endpoint Management Console again, but also a new console, which is called the Microsoft Cloud App Security Console, and look at how we implement these session controls, and also some shadow IT for the user. So back to you again, Tom.
Thank you very much. So what we have in front of us now is a Windows 10 personal device. This is a user's home device that they've just bought from the store themselves. And now what they want to do is they want to be able to access their corporate resources on this device. So if we just go to the browser, we can go to the My Apps portal and it will prompt us for a login. So if I just enter the user's details into here.
And obviously for this demo, we're actually showing you all on a Windows-based device. But when we're talking about personal devices, we've obviously got the world of iOS, Macs, and Android, where we can have a very similar experience on those mobile devices or other operating systems.
The session just timed out that I had opened, so I'll just refresh it and we'll sign in now. So we open the My Apps portal, the same as we would on the corporate side, so everything at the moment looks exactly the same. But if I click on SharePoint, So let's just take a minute to load. We can see here we're then presented with this screen saying that the access is monitored. The user can use this link just to click it, just to continue into the application. Let's just finish loading. We should see that the user SharePoint site log is exactly the same. However, if we go up to the URL, we can see this part has been added into the URL. What this is a managed corporate reverse proxy going through Microsoft Cloud Security, which we'll go through in a moment, routing the session through that technology, so we can manage this session a bit more closely. So if we just click into the site again, so again, this is the same scenario. Looks exactly the same. The user can still get to their documents, they can still be productive while on their own device. But if we open the document, we can see that they can edit it, they can read it, they can do exactly the same as they did on their corporate device. However, in this scenario, what happens if we try and print the document? I'll just go to File and Print. We get a message saying the download was blocked, so we're unable to print the document. What happens if we want to try and copy data out of the document? I'll click copy, and again, the action's blocked. What if the user feels that they can't work like this and they want to just download the document to their local device to do what they want to do? They will close that document out, we'll come to the three dots, we'll click download, and again, the download's been blocked. Another consideration that we might have is the user may want to keep a local copy of their mailbox data on their unmanaged device. So, for example, they may want to use the Microsoft inbuilt mail app. Let's try and add the user's work email to this. So if we just come to Manage Accounts and add an account, add an Office 365 account, I just need to grab the user's details again. It'll just take a moment just to load up, just to redirect to the Microsoft login page. So we'll just wait for this momentarily. So, same sign scenario, enter the password, but once we sign in, we get a message saying we can't access it from here. So the ability to add a mailbox to an unmanaged device is blocked. So how is this all administered? So if I just minimize my session and just come to this window, so this is all administered through Azure Active Directory Conditional Access. So Conditional Access, basically, it monitors signals based on the authentication that the user is trying to do. So this can be from a location, or what type of device they're logging on, or what type of users that's trying to log on to a targeted application. And then we can enforce controls such as they have to provide multi-factor authentication step up, they have to be on a corporate device, or we can block access altogether. So for our conditional access policies, I have one here, for example, where we're blocking the mail app on an unmanaged device. So that's what we saw before when the user couldn't add their local mailbox to their mail app. And what we also have is a session control conditional access policy as well, targeting the Office 365 apps such as SharePoint. So these session controls are actually managed through the Microsoft Cloud App Security solution. So if I just come to the Cloud App Security dashboard, so Microsoft Cloud Security is a tool to discover, investigate and manage Microsoft and third-party SaaS applications. And in this context, we're using it to implement session control policies for unmanaged devices. So if I just come on the left-hand side and I shall go to Control and Policies, and if I just click on the Conditional Access tab, you can see the policies that I've created here to block copy and paste, blocking downloads, and also blocking the use of the Microsoft Word desktop app if the user tried to open the files from SharePoint into the desktop app. Now, the beauty of using session control is all these user actions that the user performs on their session are tracked. So if I just come to Investigate and Activity Log, you can see here, I'll just sort by the user. There we go. You can see here every single action the user took during their session. So you can see they logged on, you can see that they tried to cut and paste that, they tried to download. So what information do we get from one of these alerts? So if I just click into an alert, you can see here we get a vast amount of information based on what's happening during that flag. So you can see the user tried to download a file, session control, the application was SharePoint, they was on a PC, a Windows 10 device, they're using Edge Chromium, the browser session, you can get the IP address, what location they're from and the user. So this can also be useful if you see one of these alerts flagged for an unknown location or an unknown IP address. This could suggest that the user session is not genuine and someone's tried to do something malicious with this account. As I mentioned, cloud security is not just for managing the use of sessions. We can also use it to discover applications within the corporate environment. So if I just go into Discover and the Cloud Discovery dashboard, we can see applications that have been discovered on these on the devices. So what we've done, we've integrated cloud security with the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint solution, which is what we're going to cover in an upcoming demo, to send signals of application information back to cloud security. And if we can see here, we can get a list of all the discovered apps, web apps that a user has accessed on their session. And from here, we can also sanction and unsanction the applications. This is how we can manage unmanaged devices on their sessions and how we can gain visibility on what users are accessing on their corporate devices. So now I'll pass you back to Andy once again to go through the next scenario.
Thanks, Tom. So now we're actually looking at our corporate and personal devices and looking at actually protection from an application point of view. What can we actually look around doing threat protection and remediation as well? So yet again, we're going to look at the user experience and the admin experience. And what we want to do is, we want to protect that corporate device in a seamless way to the user. We don't want to alert them all the time unless something bad is happening. And in this demo scenario, we'll run a couple of threats to the device. So we're going to have a bad macro, we're going to have an app that's trying to do bad things on the device. We're also going to have a user trying to do a mysterious thing of running a Tor browser. So a Tor browser, if you don't know, allows you to log onto the web, but bounces your IP address through several routes around the world, so making it difficult for somebody to track you. Obviously, this shouldn't really be happening from a user, so we want to show you how that can get blocked. And then from an admin point of view, we're going to show you some of the security policies. I'm going to show you a different console as well, the Microsoft 365 Security Center console. So let's be a bad actor, Tom.
Okay, so we're back on our Windows corporate device again. And from here, as you can see, we've got a shortcut here to a Tor browser. So while this user is not an administrator on this device, so for example, if I try to open PowerShell as admin, I'll get a prompt to enter administrative credentials. But this Tor browser that I downloaded did not require any installation, so it could just be run from the folder that it was downloaded from. However, if I try to click this application, we immediately get blocked. The executable immediately gets blocked. So the user can't access this browser on this device. Another consideration we have is, what if there's malicious content within an Office document, such as a macro that can run a script that the user might potentially be able to run. So if I just come to our File Explorer and open this document, I just need to grab the password for this document. Once it's opened, it asks us to click OK, and then you can see the macro inside is blocked straight away, so it's been unable to run. So how has this been achieved? So this device is secured with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which is a enterprise detection and response solution to allow organizations to investigate, detect, and remediate threats on corporate devices. The policies that were just implemented there were part of the Windows Defender suite, which is inbuilt into Windows 10. And if it's integrated with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, signals that Windows Defender log are sent back to the Microsoft Security Console, which we'll go through in a moment. So those blocks that we saw there, they were part of Windows Defender, and they were the attack surface reduction rules. So these rules are enforced to harden the device, so you can't run untrusted or untrusted applications, or can't install unsigned drivers. You can't run scripts, and also it blocks things like macros running inside Office documents or PDFs. So once again, how is all this administered? So what we can do, we can leverage the Microsoft Endpoint Manager to actually enforce a registration connection to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and we can also enforce the Windows Defender attack surface reduction policies, and these can all be done through the endpoint security. So from here, we have different sections of management. So we can manage disk encryption, so we can enforce BitLocker encryption on the devices. We can enforce a registration to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint using the endpoint detection and response policies. And we can use attack surface reduction policies to do what you saw there in terms of blocking untrusted applications and blocking scripts and macros from Office documents. So say this macro was successfully run. Where does that information get logged to? Well, that information gets logged into the Microsoft 365 Defender, or the Security Center, which is security.microsoft.com. This is home for all the Microsoft 365 Defender products. So in this demo, we're looking at Defender for Endpoint, but this is also where you can come to manage Defender for Office 365 and also Defender for Identity. So when a security alert has been breached, when a security attack has been breached on a device, the alerts are then sent back to this portal. And then if those alerts are related, they'll get correlated into an incident. So if I just go into instance here, wait for this to load, you can see an incident here, which was the malicious attack with the Office scripts being run on that device. So if I just click on the arrow here, you can see all the alerts that have been triggered for that security breach, and they've all been correlated into the single incident. So if I just click on an alert, we get a vast range of information, a very in-depth range of information about the exact process that was taken, the step-by-steps that were taken to administer that security breach on the device. So in this example, we can go down, we can see that Word was executed, and we can see exactly what document was opened from where. We can see a script was run from Word. We can see the PowerShell script that was run and what code was run from that script. And we can see further down that an executable got put on the device, and then a scheduled task was created to run this executable. So this gives us a vast range of information that will help your SOC analyst, or if you have a managed MDR service, security analysts can use this information to see exactly what's gone on and how we can protect against it. One feature that Microsoft Defender for Endpoint also involves is automated remediation. So if I just come back to the incident and click on the incident itself, there was an investigation that got taken place automatically on the device. So if we just come to here, we can see the status is remediated. So what this essentially means is there are Microsoft managed playbooks in the background that looks for known threats, such as this, for example, and can automatically detect it and remediate it without any administrative intervention. So if we see this graph here, we get a bit of a story about what happened during the remediation process. We see what device has been detected, what entities were found in terms of the evidence of the investigation. So we can see what evidence is found in the investigation and what the result of the investigation was. In this case, it was remediated. So you can see from here we have full visibility on the alert and the endpoint security protection of that device. So now I will pass you back to Andy, who will go through our final scenario.
Thanks, Tom. So yeah, in this final scenario, what we want to do now is make sure we keep everything fresh and up to date on those devices. So we're going to look at patching and updating the operating system. For example, we might be actually wanting to move to Windows 11. So on this one, we're not actually going to show you the user experience. It's basically going to be patching a device or updating that OS. So we're just going to show you the back-end administration, and we see how we can do this in a controlled way and rolled out way for groups of users, departments, on a time schedule for those users. Yet again, we're going to go back into the endpoint management console. So back to you, Tom.
Thank you. So, as Andy said, we're back in the endpoint management console, and this is where we can manage do patch management on corporate devices. So again, we can go to devices, and if this demo we're using Windows, we'll click into Windows, and you see here we have different options for Windows updates. So if we click into here, we have update rings. So update rings in Microsoft terminology for ring fencing different channels of updates to target devices. So in this scenario, I have a ring for a semi-annual channel. So this is where you get your more globally available patches from, where you can be targeting the majority of devices. But you can also have inner rings for Windows Insider builds or Windows Insider Fast Channel as well. So you can test in full builds or updates before they're made generally available. So you can test to ensure that they're going to work with your corporation's applications. So as Andy also said, another consideration is the update to Windows 11. So as we all know, Windows 11 has just been made available from Tuesday, and how would we manage and implement that in an environment? So we can use the feature updates in Windows 10, and we can roll out a feature update to Windows 11, so we can use this to manage the rollout onto your corporate devices. This is how we can manage patch management within Microsoft Endpoint Manager from the cloud. So, and from here, we've shown you how to administer and manage corporate devices, how to manage your unmanaged personal devices, and also security on corporate devices. So, a final consideration that we have, a final point that we like to raise is, what if the scenario is that users don't have a corporate device? So these could be a new user, for example, say their laptop didn't arrive on time, or it could be a contractor. What do we do in that scenario? Well, we can leverage Microsoft's solutions for Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365. So these are cloud-hosted virtualization solutions that allow you to publish a completely corporate managed Windows 10 desktop session that users can remote into from any device, so from a Windows or a Mac or even an iPad. If you just check on our socials, we will have a bit more information about these technologies in the future. So I'll pass back to Andy now. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. So during this session, really, we've gone through a number of scenarios. So we're taking you through being able to actually build a device remotely for that user without having a lot of input from IT, built just for the user in their own environment. We've looked at how then we can actually remotely maintain that device and protect it. And we've also shown how we can do this across personal devices. And like we mentioned, it's not just Windows, that could be iOS, Android, Mac. And we also shown you how we actually start looking for threats, and we investigate. Actually, that area could have gone. We could have gone a lot more deeper. We can do true threat hunting with Defender for Endpoint, and then we've shown you how we can actually keep those devices fresh and up to date and patched. Like, obviously, we showed you those scenarios and demos really quickly. If you want us to go into much more detail on any of these, please get in touch with us, and we're happy to do a one-to-one session with you. So, if there's any questions, we will unmute. We've got a couple of questions that have been asked to us before, so I'll just present a couple of those. But then, yeah, we'll unmute the phones. So the first one, Tom, is if they'll show the Windows 11 piece, is there any other bits that how we can go about that?
Well, it's just mainly through the update policies within the Endpoint Manager that will mainly cover managing the rollout of Windows 11. So you can push that to devices as and when at your corporation's pace.
Okay. The other piece, obviously from a Defender point of view, we should Defender for Endpoint on Windows. What about if we've got Macs or Linux pieces, or even Windows servers? Is that covered as well?
Yeah, so all those operating systems are covered by Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and if you have a Mac, we can also enroll those devices from Endpoint Manager if the Macs are for corporate Mac devices.
And the final one that we always get asked is around licensing from the Microsoft point of view of the products. That can be complex in typical Microsoft licensing. Ways, typically for a lot of the things we've shown you today, like the endpoint management piece, that's covered in a thing called the Enterprise Mobility and Security piece of the E3 license, as Microsoft would quote to you. Some of the other things like Defender would be covered in an E5, an Enterprise Suite license. But what would be, please reach out to us and we can talk through what the licensing requirements would be needed to actually protect your estate using these suite of products. So we're just going to open up the piece. I think we've already done that. So if there is any questions, feel free to ask them. If not, we'll just talk about a few other bits and pieces that are available to you. I think we might have got one question coming through. No?
If not, there is one other thing that so I'm guessing that question through.
So when the 12 hours were blocked, was that logged anywhere? Yes, it does. It goes in. That gets logged in a few different places, depending on what we're looking at that time. So Cloud Security would see it as well, and tell you it's been blocked. Defender would also see it.
Yeah, so there's auditing reports for attack surface reduction rules. So if any of them get triggered, then you can use the Microsoft Security Center to view those detections that it's found as well. I was going to mention as well regarding the policies. So I showed you the deployment of policies. One of the point is about actually scoping it to different groups. So what we can do within Azure AD is create dynamic groups. So we can do these on, say, departments, or we can do them on other factors as well, whether they're what type of operating systems they are. So we can actually manage the scoping of policies to those groups as well. So not all, so different devices can get different policies if needed.
Okay. There's no more questions. We'll just start wrapping up. Well, anyway, thank you for listening so far. And just a little reminder, this is the third in the series of hybrid working webinars that we've done. The first two were around identity and that JML, Join Mother's Leader piece. We've got the recordings of that, and as part of the email follow-up, what we'll do, we'll send you this recording of this session. We'll also send you the copy of the slides, and we'll send you the links to all the other recordings. We've got some more coming up. So in 2 weeks' time, we'll be running a session on Sentinel and threat protection. That's on Thursday, the 21st of October. We finish off the year with a detailed view of how hybrid working and identity and governance works, and that's on Thursday, November the 18th. All of these will be at 12 o'clock again, and we'll run for about an hour. There is some other next steps that we can take with yourselves. There's, like I mentioned right at the beginning, there's several no-cost accelerated workshops that we deliver on Microsoft's behalf, and these cover things such as securing identities, endpoint management, threat protection, and Azure Sentinel. And these workshops typically we run over a couple of days. We've run with our consultants virtually with you, and we're actually going to do a proof of concept so you can see how the solutions would work in your environment with real users, devices, and data. So please reach out for any more details on that, and then we could run them on your behalf. And we also have some fixed price rapid deployment services that we can undertake in your environment. So, for example, in this area, we have those rapid deployments around Endpoint Manager, around mobile device accelerators, and helping you actually create an autopilot deployment. So thank you again for all your time today. And if there's anything else you need to talk to us about, please reach out to either myself or Tom. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day.